we've been aware of what's called the Wittenberg English Ministry for about 15 years, because about 15 years ago, our closest friends, Pastor Eric and his wife, came and were part of it. Now, fast forward to 5 years ago, and 5 years ago we were traveling as tourists around Germany, finding Pat's dead relatives. And we found a lot of them. We found a lot of them. But purely by God's grace, we were able to be in Wittenberg for Reformation.
Wow.
And what a great time that was. I will tell you just a brief story. We were traveling by car, and a good friend of ours, a retired German Lutheran pastor, not Christian, who dabbled part-time in travel, had planned our trip. And we,
Das ist ein kleiner Gruß aus unserer Küche. Ich halte für Sie das
Okay. This is a special from the house for welcome, and it's a salad with, I say, chicken.
okay.
Fantastic. Wunderbar. Danke.
Gerne.
Anyway, that particular trip, when we got here to Wittenberg, our friend had booked us in a hotel a few miles out of town. And we drove to the place, and I told Matt, I said, if I'm going to be in Wittenberg, I want to be able to wake up and walk to the places. And so I went in and I canceled the reservation, which was very hard because they spoke no English, not a drop of English. And so I said, I think I canceled it. And so we drove into Wittenberg, very naively, because it's Reformation.
Oh,
And Reformation, everything.
I was not naive.
No, she wasn't.
Just for the record.
The tension in the car was significant. And I went from place to place, and we were Mary and Joseph. There was no room in the inn. And fortunately, we just, I'm driving around blindly, and I drive up next to the Luther Hotel, and I went in and they had a room. So I was, we were still married. Anyway, we spent some delightful time here, but again, I was reintroduced while I was here to the Wittenberg English Ministry. The Wittenberg English Ministry started 17 years ago by a pastor who's now retired, living near Baltimore, by the name of Keith Loosh. Keith had done a sabbatical here 18 years ago. And while he was here, he spent 2 months here. While he was here, he met the local leaders of the two churches here at the City Church and the Castle Church. And they had a mutual interest. The local people wanted more tourists, and Keith wanted to serve them spiritually. And so they agreed to allow services in those churches on alternating weekends, much as you experienced tonight. The next summer, Keith came back for 10 weeks, and it was such a success. Beginning the second full year, they began serving for a 6-month block of time, which is the tourist season. He recruits Lutheran pastors from Australia, North America, Australia, Canada, and the United States, of all denominations, and he has participants from all denominations. What did I miss? Lutheran pastors. From all Lutheran denominations. Anyway, when we were here 5 years ago, I went home and I put my name on the list. And about a year ago, he called and said, "How about the summer of 2013?" And I said, "You bet, you bet." The responsibilities of the pastor while they're here are a weekend service, one weekend at at the Castle Church and the other at the City Church. He asks us for those services to be current with our preaching, to preach on the appointed lessons for that weekend, or the suggested lessons for that weekend, as we have tonight. During the week, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we do an evening, a 4:30 service at the Corpus Christi Chapel, which is behind the City Church. It was a structure that was built the first time in the 1300s, substantially rebuilt in the 1400s, but it's been the same since then. That particular chapel is cared for by 4 elderly Lutheran nuns. You don't put those words together very often, but they are Lutheran nuns who live nearby, and they maintain the chapel. So again, the responsibilities of the weekend services, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the 2-week period. And I won't mind if you eat while I'm talking. I won't mind. I'm used to that. In addition to that, it's and as needed. Those are the for sure things, and then there's the as needed. In my case, there's a group in town of German and Swiss German-speaking Christians they're in town for about 3 days with a mutual acquaintance of Frank. They asked that I would provide a 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Devotion time for them, also at the Corpus Christi Chapel, on Friday and Saturday of this week. So when we're done here, I will go to the chapel for an evening devotion. Now, what's interesting about that is 2 things. They speak German. I don't. And so, but that's what they wanted. They wanted someone to speak to them in English. They wanted that experience. And then their group leader, Christian, translates for them. The other thing that's interesting about that is I thought that, I have responsibilities back at my home congregation. I thought one of the things I got to escape was confirmation. I thought, good, I get to leave that behind for a month. Well, about half of the group that I'm meeting with for those morning and evening devotions are 13 and 14-year-old young people who are going to be confirmed at the end of this year. And their pastors are taking them on this trip, this experience. So I couldn't escape them. I still get them, and I get to speak with them.
Awesome. What opportunity?
The people who almost, if you think about it, why would you go to Wittenberg? This is true for almost all the tourists. Why would you go to Wittenberg except that it connects with your religious roots? And so most of the tourists who come here come because of that. Now, not all. Martin Luther was, when the year 2000 rolled around, Time magazine, interestingly, listed him as number 3, was it? Yeah. The third most influential person in the last millennium. Right. Because of his influence beyond religion, his influence on the way people think and the way they challenge one another in their thinking. And so people certainly would come here for that reason. But most come because of their spiritual roots. And so they look forward to an opportunity to worship. You could see that tonight in people from Brazil who were there in our worship service. People from from Thailand. Our first evening in the Capel, Columbus District Capel. It was a small group, but in walk a husband and wife, both pastors from Iceland. Now, I don't know that I've ever met anyone from Iceland, but now I have. And I was able to involve them in the worship as well. One of the devotions I've been sharing in that particular setting was a word from Jesus from Luke, where he talks about people will come from east and west and north and south and take their place in the kingdom of God. And the experience here in Wittenberg, I mean, it is that with you on this tour, but that's the experience here in Wittenberg. People from all points of the globe come, and they represent those that we're going to see in that banquet feast in heaven. People of every tongue and of every nation. And for Pat and myself, what a great thrill. There's elements that resemble work, but what a great setting to do it in. What a great setting to do it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.